Today's podcast episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. And if you'll go over and check them out, they are the #1 electronic health record system for counselors and therapists. They will provide everything you need to make your practice run smoothly and efficiently. And go check them out, TherapyNotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get your first 2 months free. TherapyNotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 128 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've joined me for the podcast. If this is your first time listening in, glad you found us. Glad you're listening. If you're coming back for more, glad you're back. And I hope if you're listening to the podcast, you'll take time to subscribe and also go back and listen to some older episodes. A lot of great stuff there, a lot of great guests to listen to. Hope you're doing okay. We're still kind of, as I'm recording this, we're still in the middle of this coronavirus, COVID-19. It's going to be interesting to see what we refer to this as in the future. But here it is, the kind of almost midway through May, and things are starting to open up in terms of businesses opening back up and that sort of thing in different states. I know I'm just kind of, me personally, I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens before I decide what to do with my practice. We've been 100% telehealth here since all of this began and made that transition, and it's gone pretty well. I think most of our clients have been open to it and have embraced it, and hopefully you're finding the same in your practice, depending on where you're located and what's happening for you. I'm looking forward to you getting to know my guest for today, Chris Swenson. He's one of those people that I met way back in October of 2019 at Killing It Camp, an event that was held out in Estes Park for private practice owners. And it was a great event. But Chris is one of those people that has gone into private practice and really has started thinking about kind of the inner struggle that goes along with that. And he's going to share with you his story and just how he's dealt with some of those things that are sometimes tough things for people to deal with, just in terms of just looking at a mindset and just maybe something that that I like to refer to as that impostor syndrome. I think a lot of times people go into private practice and they're not sure and they feel unsure about themselves and feel like they're maybe incapable of doing this. But Chris talks about that and how he's kind of overcome that, and also how he's started a community just around this whole topic, and he calls that community the Private Practice Warriors. And so looking forward to you getting to hear from Chris. One thing I want to mention here, and this kind of came up kind of quickly for me, I think when I started putting podcast episodes together, but Chris has got an event that is going to be a Facebook event, a live event that's taking place May 11th through the 28th. I think this episode comes out on May 11th, so you'll have time to jump in on that. And I'll have links here in the show notes of how you can connect with that event and sign up for it. But it's going to be a series of talks with several other private practice enthusiasts and leaders, I guess you could say, that are out there. Some of the folks you've heard here on the podcast. So I want you to be sure and go and sign up for that and learn about that. Again, there'll be links here in the show notes and the show summary. And the name of that event is The Courage to be Bold. And I think after hearing Chris, you'll understand why he titled it that and just kind of his mindset around going into private practice. Real quickly, before we get to Chris, I wanted to remind you just to be sure and check out the resources I've got here at the Practice of Therapy on the website. I think a lot of times I fail to mention that I've got a lot of resources. I know I mentioned different events and different specials and all that kind of thing, but one thing that I think is really something that's become pretty popular, I guess, if you will, is and I think a lot of the communication that I've gotten around it through the G Suite for Therapists group I started on Facebook, but I do have a course, G Suite for Therapists, and it goes into detail about how you can use the different tools of Google G Suite in your practice and also make them HIPAA compliant. So I just want to commend that to you, that's there on the website. When you go to practiceoftherapy.com, you can just click on the link up at the top that says courses, and that'll get you to the Teachable platform for all of my courses. I've also got another course on that platform called Money Matters in Private Practice. And that really teaches you the whole financial side of private practice. And there's a premium version of that course where I teamed up with my friend Julie Harris from Green Oak Accounting. And we just go into the nuts and bolts of all the financial side of private practice in that course. And so I think it's a great resource, and I think it will would teach you a lot. So just want to commend that to you. And then also the cool resources page on the Practice of Therapy, where I've got all of my resources there that I'm constantly adding to, and just want to make sure you know that they're there. There's some a good mixture of both free resources that are available to you, but also some that you can pay for and get courses and special deals and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so in today's episode, I'm glad to have Chris Swenson with me. I will say this, we recorded this back in February. So this was before any of the current coronavirus crisis hit. And so that really wasn't even on our radar. But I think right now, mindset and just thinking about your inner struggles is something that's still relevant right now with all that's going on. So without further ado, here's my friend Chris Swenson. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so happy to have with me today Chris Swenson. And Chris, I got to know when I was out in Colorado this past year at Killing It Camp. And Chris, welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's absolutely an honor to be on your show, Gordon. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
For those listeners out there that have heard me speak before, it is an absolute pleasure to do so again. And for those who haven't, thanks for the privilege to do so.
Yes.
I mean
yeah. Yeah. I'm so thrilled to have you. So as I start out with most folks, Chris, why don't we begin by you just telling folks a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've landed where you've landed?
Yeah, I think my private practice journey goes back a little bit. I've had my own solo practice now for just about a decade. And previous to that, I did the agency route, which many of us have. And, I got to a point where, man, I was pretty not doing good health-wise, pretty stressed out, pretty strained. Actually, people thought I had a heart attack, which I don't think it was. It was just more of a lot of stress and strain. So I was on blood thinner pills, this sort of pill, that pill, all these things is trying to keep myself afloat. And eventually I decided what I've always wanted to do is go into my own private practice. And so I had about enough money for probably a month. And I just dived right in, and I was fortunate enough that things have worked. However, I did know at first it wasn't like, wow, things just fell right into place. I mean, it was definitely struggles and challenges. But part of like what we're talking about today, I mean, once I got my mindset and mentality squared away and really focused, I think things really took off. And actually, after I got into private practice, interesting, got myself off all of the meds that I was on. And I went back to the doctor, and then she said, "Oh, hey, finally everything looks pretty good." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not doing anything." It was just a change from that stress and strain of being overburdened and into something definitely new. So,
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's glad things turned around for you when just moving into that. So, yeah. So, what would you say what are kind of the big lessons you've learned as you've gone through this journey?
I think the biggest thing for me that I've really learned is never forgetting about the inner game. It's always going on. It's always there. And I would begin like a lot of people did when I first created my practice was, okay, what am I supposed to do here? So you'd hear about, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you should market. You should have this. You should have that. And you start building it. And pretty soon I pretty much had a practice where I felt like I was like a slave to the practice. It wasn't mine. And so it was almost this illusion that I bought into and realized I designed this. Hey, I got a full practice. Yay. But I wasn't quite having that sense of fulfillment. But once I stepped back and really identified my purpose, found that passion, really lived by my principles, and really found that one big thing I could do each and every day to move the dial, things began to fall more into place. And I began to feel, a lot more fulfilled. Even though there's still struggles, there's challenges, we all have to like fly through that turbulence to build our practice, to scale it or whatever. However, it's being able to each and every day feel those joyful feelings.
Yeah.
And that feels real good.
Right. Yeah. So, what were some of the, with it sounds like really you had just kind of a little bit of an internal struggle as far as thinking, okay, why am I doing this? What's my purpose in all of this? What were some of the things that you were able to do that really began to change your mindset or help you with that?
Well, for me, it took probably a different journey than some probably do. I went and really got ingrained with a lot of the warrior community and learned a lot about mental toughness and mindset from many of those individuals. And it was a lot of really, like I said, once I got the purpose passion, but identified like the principles which I operate by each and every day, and going out and earning those every day becomes something there. Plus the daily practices of what I do to make sure that I'm making the right decision instead of something out of fear. As many times we get a, fear of scarcity, like, wow, I need to get some money now, so I better take this client on or that one on. And pretty soon you don't have the practice that you really wanted from there. But so there was internal struggles because I come from a background, I think, initially where very defeatist mindset, things just don't work out very good. Things aren't going to be there, some low confidence. And once I began working on a lot of just daily work and really ingraining this new mentality in for me, now I feel absolutely great. There's a lot more confidence, I'm a lot more calmer. There's a lot more mental clarity for decisions to be made, and being able to do the right thing instead of just like what I call, like the inner game part. I always call like darkness. Darkness is something that's around us all the time, and it affects us. It might bring on fear, might bring on self-doubt, whatever it might be. And I want to make sure that the decisions I make for my life and my practice are in line with what's important for me and those I serve, and not just out of fear or doubt or anxiety as well.
Right. Yeah. So as you went through this process, what were some of maybe some of the exercises you did or the things that you found helpful in really kind of boosting that new mindset? You mentioned your community, your private practice warrior community, which we'll have links to that in the show notes and such. But tell folks a little more about that.
Well, what I had done is I took a look at what's been going on within the private practice community. There's so much, we don't know how to operate a business. I was fortunate that I came from the business world before I got into this, so I was fairly lucky in that sense. But that was also in the mid 90s, technology is so different. But I've seen it so much where people are, hey, just build your practice, scale your practice, expand your stuff, do all of these. And then you're going to reach like that promised land and feel that sense of fulfillment. And what I've found is that it's like almost like an illusion, like they were given a check and it bounced, where all of a sudden they're more stressed, they're mentally fatigued, they're tired. I've heard from some where it's like, I hope I just stay married, and so there was such an impact that it wasn't quite getting where they're at. And the answer a lot of times is just do more. And so what I looked at was trying to find out, what is it, what really makes a successful practice for the long haul, and looking at numbers of failure rates over the years and I noticed that the failure rate has remained the same, even though we've got better technology and we've got a lot more programs, but it's still the same. And so I looked at that as, I wonder what the missing variable is. And so what I found was the missing variable was just that it was you. It's our inner game. It's we have to get ourselves to do X, Y, Z every day. And how do we get ourselves to do that was the missing link. And so when I wrote the book, Private Practice Warrior, that's what I had put on there, like a little line for it, is the most impactful factor to creating a successful practice is that, where you begin with you. You get yourself, your mindset, mentality, your purpose, passion, all these things in line. And from there, not only do you can accomplish great things, no doubt, but the point of it is not just to create this great business, this great practice. It's being a better person through doing all of these things. So when I found some of that out, it's like, I need to do that. I'm just tired of seeing a lot of people struggle and having a hard time not getting that joy and fulfillment from what they're doing. And for me, there's a way. And being able to, through the book, we could talk a little bit about that. But I mean, what I look at is when you bring on not just a powerful mindset with some mental skills and mental tips. I mean, those are helpful to fly through all the turbulence we got to fly through just to build our practices. But there's a time about, how do you build a better you? You become a better person through all of these, through building it. And I think that's the essence of being a private practice warrior. It's not just building the practice. It's becoming a better person through the challenges of building a better practice, which requires just, simply some mental skills, but also just a different mentality of how you look at practice as well.
Yeah. I know you mentioned earlier just going from a scarcity mentality to more of an abundance mentality. Yeah. So what helped you with that? I mean, making that shift? Because I think a lot of us operate on that kind of scarcity mentality. Yeah,
I think there got into me where I could understand, like, okay, this is the scarcity mentality that I'm probably most operating from. And I'm aware that that's not okay. And I know that there's this other one out there. And that's what I want to do. And so there was a lot of, almost, if I could use like analogy of like a computer, you have this scarcity mindset program and different things trigger the program and it runs. And once it's starting to run, that just kind of takes over. And so bringing in a different one, like a practice warrior mindset, it's just a matter of noticing, getting that awareness of that first initial pull when the program's running, and then having kind of a little statement or something that can like interdict it, catch it, and then getting yourself onto a different, more empowering type mindset. And that can be done just in the day-to-day, but it's also in different circumstances. So that's what I had found is, like, there's a lot in me that I needed to be aware of that would come up at different times. And without the awareness, that's where I think darkness would mess with me. And pretty soon I'm not being productive. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And when it all comes down to it, I mean, I can try to blame all the circumstances, but essentially it's me not getting me to be disciplined enough to get things done consistently. And so there's a lot of, I think basically is just getting that awareness to start with, of having almost like a scarcity loop that gets filled. And, it's almost like, which kind of mentality do you want to feed? You want to feed the scarcity one, or do you feed a more empowering, powerful mindset? So having that awareness and then being able to catch it with some powerful statements, driving it into something different with some more visualization, and getting yourself on that takes practice, takes time, but it's something an attitude that I probably had to take just in each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'd use it kind of a funny way. I mean, where I'd go watch my son play sports or whatever, and his team would be getting behind or whatever, or even my teams I like to watch were getting behind. And even then, I'd be like, okay, no, we've got this, and trying to stay in that fight, trying to stay in with that. And a lot of that became a way of ingraining, I think, some of that in me. So it's not just doing the skills when it's up, but is making it a part of who you are. And that becomes where it's something that is programmed. And
Mm-hmm.
extensively to program that mindset.
Right, right. Yeah, so you started the Private Practice Warrior community and the book. How did all that come together? Was that something you formed, or was it something that others had helped you with?
No, that's something that I pretty much did on my own, realizing I'm at a level now where I can't do everything by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I mean, initially I had this idea, and then I started seeing the struggles as we talked about, and I needed to do something. I wanted to make a difference. And what made a difference for me, I wanted to be able to share that with others. And so I thought about writing the book. And so my parents live up in Minnesota where it's cold in the winter, very cold, a lot of snow. And every year they'll go down south somewhere, usually in Nevada. So they were out in Nevada at the time, and I told them I just need a place to go, middle of nowhere, and just write this thing. So I went up to their lake home in the middle of the winter where it was below zero every single day I was there, and the snow was piled up. And so then I went through the process of really writing of the book. And the book itself isn't necessarily like a traditional business book where, hey, here's these lessons. This is what this company did. This is what this successful person did, that kind of format. I wrote it like a story. And so they have like a main character to the story, and you get to follow the main character through this journey that the character goes on. And there's a lot of twists and some turns in the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
And through, excuse me, through living through that main character and seeing the changes that were there, you begin to learn about kind of the identity of being a private practice warrior and really identifying your purpose, your passion, never forgetting about the inner game, things like that. So you can kind of like take out a lot of those ideas as you learn from the story
Right.
that's going on there. So
yeah. Well, one of the things that strikes me about it that I think is, which I totally agree with you, Chris, is that there's this idea or this thing that's, I guess, put in our minds, and is probably more of an American kind of culture, is that bigger is better, and it's kind of like when you start a business, you need to make it grow and get it really huge or that sort of thing. But you've kind of found something different. And I'm reminded of a former guest that I had on the podcast, Paul Jarvis, who he wrote the book, I think, Company of One, or Company. Yeah, I think that's the title of the book. Hopefully I'm getting that right. But that bigger isn't necessarily better. So how did you kind of come to that conclusion for yourself?
well, I think for me, what I was always after is making sure that setting it up, what's most important to me, what is the lifestyle that I want to have, what's going to bring me the greatest fulfillment. And from there, then you can kind of go out and if bigger is better for you and fits, then you do. If smaller is what you're after, then it is. So I think sometimes, and I guess for me, it's whatever we put out into the external world, whether it's bigger, whether it's less, whatever you're doing, what has to be there without missing is just that inner part of it is this bringing you the fulfillment that you really wanted, And
Yeah.
I know part of the practice warrior stuff is really, really wanting to be a better person, that personal growth, that development, not only just becoming that way for a better practice owner, but as like, a better parent, better community. And the challenges it'll take to grow or to put stuff out into the external world provide some of those stresses that become like weights that we can lift against and overcome, that as we begin to expand who we are, now we become that better person. So to me, I look at bigger is better, could be, if it fits for you. I think that's the biggest part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. It's really a matter of really knowing yourself well and just really, again, one of my mantras, and you're kind of echoing this, is you've got to always know your why as to
Yeah,
why you want to do what you want to do. And I think tied into that is really thinking, again, as you've said, is tied into that is our lifestyle. I think it's kind of ridiculous just to go out and make a bunch of money just for the sake of making a bunch of money. But if you can really kind of define the money that comes in is really based on the lifestyle you want to lead, that's a healthier place to be. And
yeah,
so, yeah.
yeah, no doubt. I know we got a lot of struggles sometimes around money in our practice community, like the private practice in general,
Hmm.
within the community of some difficulties with money. And a lot of how I look at some of that is, I mean, if you do, like, if money would be symbolic in a sense of what you've done for somebody. So when you go to McDonald's and you give them a 20, you're handing and say, hey, look, this is what I did for someone to earn this, and I'm giving it to them so they can earn theirs. And so sometimes, the more people you help, maybe the more money you make. And it's not necessarily just because of having just this lucrative and plenty of money, but it's a matter of that, of feeling that, wow, I did something of value.
Hmm.
And this
Hmm.
is a way in which I may be rewarded for that as well. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's really it's really about being genuine with all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a critical thing that I think a lot of people need to know is to be who you are. There's a lot of ideas out there on how to either build or grow the practice or what you need to do and the voice you should have. But I think when it comes down to it, is just be who you are. And I could go back to graduate school. I remember on that's been in me ever since then, where they always come up, you got to have this theory of change. You need to have some theory to operate by. And I kept telling them, like, I just want to be me. Like, I'll learn about all these different things and I'm just going to be me. They're like, oh, so you want to be eclectic? I'm like, no, that's not it. It's just to learn it all and then make it something of who you are. I know
Hmm.
one of the guides in the book is one of the greatest samurai warriors of all time that really helps with the main character. And what I learned from a lot of samurai was they would do all the samurai training for a number of years and then stop for also a number of years and do nothing but something else. So that way, when they came back, it was more just natural, just who they are.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I love this concept, and I think you're right on the mark, Chris, when just thinking about this in terms of our mindset and being able to really again, to live the lifestyle that we want to live with private practice, whatever size practice that you have. And so I think that's being able to take some, give yourself some distance from it a little bit, like you did, of just kind of going out in the cabin and writing the book and really kind of gathering all those thoughts. I think those are all just so valuable in being able to really figure out what is your ideal practice and how does it fit your lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, I mean, there's so much potential, I think, that a lot of us have as therapists to really make a difference. And I think
Hmm.
there's times where I've seen a lot of great therapists who really could get a better reach if they were in private practice, for example, or if they're in private practice to be able to get out of that therapy room and expand that.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how I could see where they could be and the difference that they can make. But then you get all that turbulence from darkness in the head that's holding them back, or the fears. And for me, I
Hmm.
want to see that. I want to be a witness to some of those rides to help people to be able to get those dreams, to realize those dreams, and
Hmm.
be a part of that story, because I think that there's so much more that we can definitely do.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Well, Chris, I want to be mindful of your time, and I'm so glad that you were able to join me on the podcast. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you and if they want to find out more about the work you're doing and the Private Practice Warriors.
Well, it's fairly simple. If you just head over to a website I have where I've kind of compiled everything there, and it's just simply I am the words, or actually the letters I am chrisswenson.com. So just at IamChrisSwenson.com, and everything's there. You can definitely go over there. You can get a free copy of the book along with a little special bonus as well. And in time, developing a private practice warrior program that I'm hoping to really be able to just meet with some people and really try to get in there and help them realize a lot of their dreams and feel that fulfillment, not only just the business, but also their life too. So I am chrisswenson.com.
All right. And we'll be sure to have links to all of that in the show summary and the show notes. I hope that we'll be able to get together again here soon, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an honor to meet you at Killing It Camp, and I'll probably see you again there next year.
I'll be there. I'll be there for sure.
You bet. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm really hoping that a lot of the audience people, thanks for the privilege of being able to speak in front of a lot of you, and hope that you find some value from that.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed getting to hear from Chris and just kind of hearing his story and really his way of thinking about just some of the inner struggles that we can all go through in thinking about being in private practice and owning our own businesses, and maybe some of the mindset things that kind of hold us back, and particularly just thinking in terms of more of an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset. And I think it's always good to kind of check in with that for ourselves. I know for me, I have to do kind of have some of those talks with my inner self, my inner world. And, it's also something I talk about with my therapist when I go to therapy myself. And I think all of us need that, and being able to kind of look at how we're thinking about things, and being able to push our practices forward. So thanks again to Chris for joining me for this particular episode, and be sure and check out his resources. Again, the links to those things will be here in the show notes and show summary, and check out his community, Private Practice Warriors. I think you'll find it something that's inspiring for you. Do be sure and check out today's sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes, and they're at TherapyNotes.com. They are the #1 electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and they provide so many great tools that you can use for your practice. It's really become the hub of my practice in terms of scheduling and making appointments, filing insurance claims, documentation. All of those things are housed right there in TherapyNotes. And they have a great patient portal available, and it has just streamlined our practice and helped us automate so much more by using that particular tool. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months of their services for free. So be sure to check them out, therapynotes.com. And also be sure to check out the resources on the Practice of Therapy website. If you'll just go to practiceoftherapy.com, and if you'll click on the button Cool Resources, that'll show you everything we've got, so to speak, and let you help you connect with a lot of great resources that are available there. So, folks, do stay well, stay healthy. I hope that you and your family are doing well through this season we're in, and I look forward to being with you again next week on the Practice of Therapy podcast. And oh, by the way, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it, and also leave us a review. That just helps other people find us and hopefully boosts our rankings. Leave us a review, leave us a ranking, wherever you might be listening to it. So take care, folks. Have a great rest of your week or weekend. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.